church in Philadelphia. Every spring, they recognize their high school graduates. On a certain Sunday, at a particular point in the service, they invite all the high school seniors to come forward and to tell the congregation about what they'll be doing next. One young man stands up and says, I'm going to Harvard. I'm going to study to become a doctor. A young woman says, I'm going to take up engineering at MIT. Another says, I'm going to go to Princeton and become a lawyer. Well, after all the young people have taken their turn telling about their plans, the minister gets up and looks at the young people and says, you can't even imagine it right now, but someday you're going to die. Someday they're going to take you out into the cemetery, put you in a hole, throw dirt in your face, and then everyone is going to go back inside the church and eat potato salad without you. So think about what you're going to do with your life, the minister says. Are you going to spend your life trying to accumulate titles for yourself? Titles like bachelor's degree, master's degree, titles like vice president, CEO, chairman of the board. Is life about collecting titles for ourselves? Or is life about collecting testimonies? Pharaoh had a title. Pharaoh of Egypt. It was a good title. In the time that he lived, he was the most powerful man on the face of the earth. But when the Pharaoh died, that's all he had. A title. But Moses, the man who led the Hebrew slaves out of Egypt and on to that special land that God had promised to give them, Moses never had any official title. He was never named prime minister or general manager. But when Moses' life came to an end, he had more than his share of testimonies. When Moses' life came to an end, people spoke about his faith, his commitment, his devotion. And even to this day, people still offer their testimonies to what Moses did with his life. But there was Queen Jezebel, another good title, Queen of Israel. And there from her throne, Queen Jezebel used the power that was there at her disposal to harass the people of God and did her best to eliminate the prophets. But when Jezebel's life came to an end, that is all she had, a title. But Elijah had the testimonies. When Elijah's life came to an end, people remembered what he did and told about it, how he risked his life and showed boldness by speaking God's word to Queen Jezebel and to the other powers that be. How he had a faith and a passion for God that moved a nation. And even now, centuries and centuries later, people still offer their testimonies to what Elijah did with his life. What is life mainly about? Is it about getting out there and collecting as many titles for ourselves as we can? Or is it about living our lives in such a way that we will collect testimonies? Is it about living our lives in such a way that people will remember us, not for what we grabbed for ourselves, but they'll remember us for the love that we had for God and the difference that love made here in the pages of Genesis is a rather lengthy story about Abraham and his wife Sarah, and their son Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and then their twin sons Esau and Jacob. And especially when we learn about Jacob's life, we come to see firsthand what it looks to live a life focusing on grabbing as much stuff for yourself as you can. Jacob's story actually begins a few chapters previous to the passage that we heard today. We're told that when he and his twin brother Esau were born, Esau came out first. But even then, Jacob was grabbing on to his brother's heel, trying to pull him back in so that he could be the first out. In fact, Jacob was given the name Jacob, a name that means supplanter, one who reaches out and grabs what belongs to someone else. Then, some years later, when they were growing up, one day Esau came home after a long day of hunting out in the field, and he was famished. And his brother Jacob was sitting there cooking dinner, making some red-colored stew. But even though his brother was starving, Jacob refused to give Esau anything to eat until Esau first entered into a deal with him. Jacob said he would only feed his brother dinner if first Esau gave to him the birthright, the status of being the oldest son and the double share of the inheritance that they would receive from their father. And because Esau was so famished, he agreed to the deal. And in that way, Jacob grabbed for himself yet another thing, the status of the birthright, the prestige and the power that came with being the firstborn. But Jacob wasn't finished with his grabbing. Years later, as their father was getting older and his eyesight was beginning to fail, Jacob tricked their father Isaac into giving him the blessing that was intended for Esau. You see, Esau was a rather hairy man. And so Jacob came up with a kind of disguise for himself, covering himself with animal skins, and approached his father and duped him into thinking that he was Esau. And in that way, Jacob grabbed yet another thing for himself, the title of being the one who had received their father's special blessing. Well, as you might imagine, by that point, Esau had had just about enough of Jacob, and he was giving serious thought to killing his brother. And so that's when their mother, Rebekah, stepped in and encouraged Jacob to get out of town for a while, to leave home and to visit some distant relatives.